Hello, and welcome to Pique My Interest, the show dedicated to creativity. My name is Scoob Decker, and I am an artist, and your host. Pique My Interest is an exploration of art across North America in meeting some incredible artists, learning about their craft, and exploring what makes them create. Welcome to Pique My Interest. Hello, and welcome to Pique My Interest. I am currently in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, sitting in this incredible studio with this awesome artist. How are you doing today?
I'm great. It's been a great day.
Awesome. Yeah. Do anything interesting lately?
I was at the Sidewalk Arts Festival this weekend. Mm-hmm. I was in Guadalajara for about 9 days this August.
That's awesome.
It was really great.
Well, please tell us a little bit about you. What is your name and where are you from?
I am Sonja Hernandez, and I grew up in the mountains of North Carolina, right outside Asheville.
And now we're in Sioux Falls. And please, pique our interest. What is your craft?
I am a professional potter. I get to make things with clay, and I teach classes also.
And what is your specialty within pottery?
I like to think, I always use the word whimsy, that my pieces are mostly functional. I do some artsy pieces, but the majority of my pieces are whimsical, fun, but you can also use them every day.
Yeah, while we've been talking today, you've been mentioning that your work is functional first. We've talked a little bit about how an art piece having a dual concept of functionality actually heightens the artistic side of it. But what makes your work different than others who also make pottery?
There's a huge range of what people make out of clay out there, from very simple forms, produced in their studios where everything looks exactly the same, to more small batch pottery, which is probably where I fall in to. Like, I do make a lot of the same things, but from piece to piece, there are going to be slight variations, color variations, and things like that.
Yeah, what I love about your work is that you can see any piece and you can definitely tell that it's a Sonja Gloria piece. So can you go into a little bit about your thought process on pieces being functional versus artistic?
For functional, I really want with let's say a mug, you want the handle to feel really great. You want it to hold the right amount of liquid, which actually for me changes all the time. Do I want small mugs? Do I want big mugs? Somewhere in between. And then I want to add more artsy elements to that, which would just bring color, carvings, shapes, alterations, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get more into your creation process a little bit later. But let's get into your background a little bit. Do you have any education in pottery?
I do. I grew up in Black Mountain, North Carolina. I started taking pottery in high school when I was 17. I sat at a pottery wheel for the first time and was instantly hooked. I just knew that I didn't know what I was going to do for the rest of my life, but I was definitely going to make more pots. And then I started taking classes and decided to get a 2-year degree in pottery from Haywood Community College.
And there's a lot of pottery in Asheville.
There is a ton of pottery in Asheville. Yeah, and North Carolina in general. Yep.
And so you got a lot of training there?
I did. It's the program that I was in was intensive 2-year program. Everything from making pots to showing pots, the business side of things, which a lot of fine art degrees kind of don't get. The reality of like selling to galleries, selling on your own, doing your spreadsheets and all your banking and things like that, which is very helpful. Yeah.
And then what took you to Wisconsin?
In 2010, my husband decided to go to grad school, and so we moved to Madison, Wisconsin.
And is that where Sonja Gloria was born?
Pretty much. I had always been doing pottery since 2023, since I graduated, but more on a small scale because I had kids. And once we landed in Wisconsin, I found a local Madison Pottery Guild and kind of launched my Sonja Gloria Pottery from there.
Yeah, and that is kind of where it all started.
Yeah.
And so what brought you to Sioux Falls?
My husband got a job at Augustana University, I think it was 2017, so we moved out here about 8 years ago.
And have you had this studio the whole time?
I've had this studio, I think, for 7 years. It wasn't, the first year I didn't. have it, I think, that we're here. So it's about 7 years.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the early inspirations for this. What about your upbringing in North Carolina that wanted to turn you into a creator?
I've always been a creator, an artist, ever since I was old enough to hold crayons that I can remember. I grew up without a lot of technology. That's how old I am. So I was thinking about that the other day. Reading Rainbow was pretty much the only TV show, maybe some Sesame Street, that I watched as a kid. So when you don't have that distraction, you do other things. So I was actually born in Ohio for the first couple years I lived there, and I would collect Buckeyes and glue them together into these little figures. Like, that was probably my first sculptures. And from there, it was just always drawing, crafting, creating. I have a grandmother. She's no longer with us, but she was a big crafter artist. So whenever I hung out with her, it was always teaching me how to do art or going to artist studios with her.
So what piqued your interest about pottery? What made you choose to go into ceramics?
So honestly, it was the first time I sat at the pottery wheel. I had avoided the pottery wheel because of the cleanup when I was like a teenager, because there's a lot of cleanup. But when I was 17 in high school, I had a great art teacher, and I decided that I wanted to make a goblet. And so I sat at the pottery wheel, and she taught me some things, and I tried, and I was instantly hooked, but realized how hard it is and how hard it is to make a goblet. It's not a beginner project. So I decided I'm just going to keep doing this. And then from there, I found out about the school that was kind of close to where I grew up. I decided that's what I was going to do.
Incredible. Yeah, if you've ever sat down with some clay or tried to make a pot, it is extremely difficult. One of my favorite classes I ever took in grad school was clay making, and it wasn't to build anything functional. It was basically kind of come up with an image in your head and see if you can formulate it with this clay, and nobody could do it. It is such a unique skill set to have. And when I was asking you earlier, you didn't have to mention the history of your craft because it's pottery, but then you said that you do have a little bit of a story behind that.
Yeah.
What is the history of pottery?
So imagine Mesopotamia. People wove baskets before there was pottery, and people would weave baskets and line them with mud from the river to hold water or hold tiny things. And then when the basket broke, they would throw it in the fire. And somewhere along the line, someone cleaning out the fire pit or something realized that there was actually a basket form from the mud that had been in the basket. So they say that that's the beginnings of pottery. Okay. That's where it all started.
Well, that's the beginning of pottery. You've been interested now. You're starting to create different shapes and different stories within the pottery. And now you have your whole studio. You've got a whole practice here in Sioux Falls. To me, that says success. Do you consider yourself successful? And what really is success in pottery?
I consider myself successful to an extent, especially in Sioux Falls. I make enough. I make a living, which is all I've ever aspired to do. And even in the online world, I'm starting to be more successful. So I think in the grand scheme of things, I'm not as successful as a lot of ceramic artists, but especially for Sioux Falls, I feel like I'm doing really well.
Right. It's very hard. I mean, it's a trick question because as an artist, success is definitely pay the bills. Yeah. But then artistically, just being able to do it is very fulfilling. So it's trying to find that balance. And here we are in the thick of it, grinding it out. You said you just got done with an incredible weekend doing a lot of sales, and you're just gearing up for the next thing.
Yeah.
And so now I think it's time to dive into your creation process a little bit. How do you get all of these ideas into the clay?
Originally, when I started my studio, which was just in my basement in Madison, Wisconsin, I decided, that was the first time where I decided I needed a body of work for shows, especially because a lot of shows are juried, so you have to send them high quality pictures, and they prefer that it's a body of work and not just 5 different pictures of random pots. So I sat down with that in mind and just started creating, mostly throwing. I sketch a little bit, but mostly I just throw to see what happens. Clay's recyclable at this point, and usually not terribly expensive if you just throw stuff. So I like to just I get an idea and I'm like, oh, I'll just try that. A lot of times it actually comes while I'm throwing something else, and I'm like, we're just gonna do this other thing and see where it goes.
For those peekers out there who are not familiar with pottery, what is throwing?
Throwing is when you're using the clay on the wheel. I feel like it's a term for all of that. Like anytime the pottery's on the wheel, that's throwing, basically.
How about let's go a little further. In about a minute, explain what you do on the wheel.
You center, so it has a lump of clay that I throw on the wheel first, so that's centering. We open, which means I push my middle finger into that lump of clay. Once it's centered, make a bottom, and then we pull. That's when I get the walls, and then just finish it off kind of with a rib
and so your artistic touch as the artist is kind of doing the final shape of it there.
The final shape, but then what I do later, like these are going to be mountain mugs, so I'll go in and carve them extensively, and it takes a long time to glaze them too. So how do you decide which pieces get carved and which ones don't? Mostly just my mountain mugs get carved, because I carve in the mountains and the moon. They have moons on them too. So you've just been playing and experimenting and finding what piece is needed and finding your signature touch. Pretty much, yeah. And I think that you do have a signature piece, and I want to get my hands on one. You make these mugs that look like they've been slit in the middle and folded over, and they have a button. Yes. And I think they are the cutest things, and I think you talk about how all of your work is functional, but to me, that is heightened artistry as well. Thank you. And you've also talked a little bit about color. I've always pictured ceramics being able to be like a dark red or a brown. What kind of colors can you put on them? Really, the sky's the limit at this point. That hasn't always been true, but with more modern chemistry and things like that, and people just motivated to make a lot of colors, I mix a lot of my own glazes. I buy a few of them. My favorite is a matte kind of turquoise color that I really love. I've just found a purple I really like. I kind of balance it. Sometimes I like a nice white mug, says a lot, because I love shape so much. I kind of want the glazes to be simple enough, but I do like bright color. But I want the shape to speak for itself a lot of times. Is it a little restricting in the sense that you're put into kind of almost like a muted, almost like pastel color palette? Or are you able to create darker tones? You can create darker tones, and you can also buy a lot of glazes in almost any color at this point, especially with Cone 6 electric firing. When you get into a reduction, there's even more chemistry to think about and what's going on in the kiln, and it can get a little more iffy, or colors can burn out at higher temperatures too. Sky really is the limit. And so what kind of material are you using? What kind of clay do you like to use? This is a B mix. I really like to use it. It's a stoneware porcelain mix. I like this one because you can get a lot of really nice colors. I also use a stoneware, which will be more muted a lot of times, a little more earthy. And then I use a nice red clay that I like a lot too. And they're all just for the look of them? Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, that's why I use them. Some people, porcelain and B-mix, you can get a little more fluidity in the clay, what makes the clay look like it's moving. And I do play with that a little bit, but not as much as some folks. Yeah. And what inspires you? What gets your creative juices flowing? Oh gosh, everything. I'm really into the artist way. Not sure if you're familiar with that. I love the artist way. So I've never finished it, but I'm still just all the time trying to make my way through it. I love it. It really is a beautiful book that helps creatives tap into their blocks and their even the things that are sad in your life and work through it and like find your creativity. I think online last year started calling it glimmers or something, which to me is just like all artists are doing all the time. We're just looking at beautiful things and acknowledging that they exist in the world. For me, that is the best part about being an artist. Like I was just in Guadalajara. It was more vacation. My husband was working, but just to walk around and see colonial and the old buildings and the art and all of that is like, it's all inspiring all the time. Wow. Yeah, absolutely. And you have a couple kids, and I'm sure they are just inspiring for you to just come in and fire up the kiln and make some fun pieces. It might be more of a space to clear my head. For my teenagers.
If any artists out there are interested in taking a deep dive into your artistry or your creativity, the Artist Way, I can't talk about enough. You're gonna find some parts of you that you've never discovered, but if you're not willing to go there, it's a tough place. But sometimes you get some really cool art out of it, and you find some aspects about your life that you can tap into. It was incredible. And while you're working, sometimes at home you might have a bad day. The kids aren't doing what you want them to do, and you just don't have the inspiration to come into work. How do you overcome a creative block?
As a working artist, and this is how I make a living, I don't really have time for creative blocks. If I would like to pay my bills, I have to keep making pots. Sometimes I might get too busy cranking out work that sells to set aside time for my creative work, or just time to where I want to create a new body of work. I usually just try to set aside time for me, but also artist dates, which is part of the Artist Way. So kind of like giving myself time to create at home. Now that my oldest is in college, I have a little craft room. So I sew, I knit, I do all these other things, and that actually helps me kind of relax and quiet my mind so I can think more about what I want to create.
Do you find that when you're just pumping out pieces, the repetitiveness becomes a little monotonous?
I think that's why I don't just have one solid body of work. I make a lot of different batches of work. Yeah. And that is really fun for me. That's if I had to make the exact same mug every day for the next 50 years, I would not. It wouldn't be for me. And it wouldn't have the magic that I think my mugs do.
The magic, Sonja. Yeah, absolutely. I love that about pottery, is that you can look at two different pieces made basically at the exact same time, and they're not going to be identical.
Yeah.
Each one is made with that touch, and that Sonja Hernandez touch, I think, is why people are reaching out and trying to get their hands on one of these pieces. And while you're working and trying to get these pieces to be as perfect as you can, how much are you willing to adapt and change the work as you're moving with it?
I'm pretty flexible. I definitely have ideas. Like I have a whole line of mugs here. You can tell they're not all exactly the same. I give myself a little grace. I'm not a perfectionist, which helps tremendously. I had a roommate in college, and I attribute it to her that I don't need things as symmetrical as I used to at some point. She was like even more artsy than me and would make things that were not symmetrical, and it was like the first time I was like, oh, I can branch out of this idea that things have to be perfect or especially symmetrical.
Absolutely. I think as artists, that's probably our biggest speed bump in our lives, is being able to just let go and being able to just say, it's not perfect, but it's me, and let's go make the next thing. Absolutely. I think that is so admirable, and thank you for pushing your creativity to show us these pieces. And so while you're just pushing through these, what kind of hobbies do you have? And do you think they complement or contradict your craft?
I think they complement. Every hobby I have is pretty much crafty oriented, art oriented. When I find time, I like to be in nature, so that definitely complements and inspires. And then I like to just create almost anything. I've had to stop myself over the years. Now that I'm creating constantly in the studio, I don't go buy random art supplies as much. Like, I'm going to learn how to make jewelry because I just don't have the time. But I do still sew and knit, and I paint, but not very well. Fun things like that.
You were talking earlier about your inspiration in nature and how much you draw from being outside and getting out. And then you've moved a few times and haven't had to be able to tap into that. Have you been able to find something else to kind of fulfill that? Or while you're creating, do you tap into what those experiences used to give you? Or have you found something new?
Yeah, I think now that I don't live as close to nature as I did when I was in Asheville. I think your idea of what is beauty changes, because when I lived in Madison, at first I didn't find the prairie beautiful, but after a couple years, you're like, you realize that there is beauty in everything. It's just not what you're used to. And so tapping into that, or looking more critically, or even more softly at like the landscape around you is actually beautiful. For now, I live in this beautiful old neighborhood, so even just taking a walk, and there's a little lake in my neighborhood and things like that, and a Japanese garden. So I'll just take that for now, unless I'm traveling, because we do travel a bit.
There's always nature.
Yeah.
So you just got to be able to find it. And sometimes it's mountainous rolling hills of the Carolinas, or sometimes you get the Black Hills of South Dakota. Also, bouncing around, you said that you kind of had your touch in Wisconsin and the Carolinas, and then you didn't quite have your place here. But it took you a while to find your artistry within the community.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. When we moved to South Dakota, it was a little hard. I kind of assumed that my business would just seamlessly flow to South Dakota, but that wasn't necessarily the case. The first couple shows I did, the first couple times I put myself out there they weren't the best shows sometimes. I wasn't that well received. Not what I was used to. It wasn't that people weren't excited to buy pots. It wasn't the same as what I was used to. So, it was a little hard. It was a little bit of a hit to my ego. But I just decided, I did some trips. I went to Omaha. I did some Minnesota shows. And then in 2021, I started doing the farmers market. And that is actually where I really found my everyday market of people who were really excited about pottery.
Yeah, and we were talking earlier, artist markets, people they're clutching their purse a little bit and they're a little skeptical about things, but for some reason people are just so happy at farmers markets, and they're willing to talk to you, and they're willing to learn about your process and explore your creations, and that is where I think you've flourished, and you've been able to find your touch in this community. So thank you for your patience and being able to work with this community and finding your place here. And then going a little bit further for anybody else trying to become a potter, would you recommend going to school or taking classes to build on pottery?
I am very thankful that I went to school. I learned so much. I had the best teachers. In my professional crafts department, there were 4 teachers in 4 different specialties, and they were masters in their work. So even though I loved my teacher, but he was always very nice. We had a wood teacher who was a little harsh, but he was going to tell you exactly what he thinks, which sometimes you need someone who's a little more critical or this or that. And I think going to school definitely gave me a well-rounded approach to ceramics and a very strong basis. I definitely encourage people. I know there are people out there who are like, I bought a wheel, I bought a kiln. And that's great if you have that personality where you can explore and not get frustrated. But there's so much beyond. If you're doing functional, there's some safety and things like that too that you need to worry about. And like, you don't want mugs to break when you pour hot liquid into it, things like this, that at least have someone. Nowadays with the internet, it's a little easier. You can research a lot more. But
YouTube University.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I have always thought that school is great. They'll be able to teach you what they want to teach you, but just going out into the real world and just doing it. But I will say something like pottery or ceramics, schools will have all of the supplies.
Yes.
And the tuition might be a pretty big chunk of change, but once you get there, you almost have unlimited resources. And you got all these kilns, you got all these glazes, until you graduate and you go, oh wait, I don't have access to that anymore. Yeah. So I will say that is a great resource to be able to go into.
Just a beautiful space. I'm not in a point in my life where I could do that again, but I did not take it for granted, and it was such a great space to be in that point in your life where you can give your all to your art. Is such a beautiful space to be.
You're also in a place with other people trying to do the same. So the self-discovery and the class discovery is kind of a magical place for artistry. So what would be your advice for newcomers trying to get started in pottery?
Definitely take a lot of classes. Go to Haywood Community College. They're still there if you want to go live in North Carolina. But there are colleges everywhere that have art departments. For me, getting a 2-year degree in pottery was what I needed. I might not have succeeded in a 4-year degree because I'm a lot less studious in some things except for art. So that was what I needed. So people just have to find their niche and what they really need to succeed.
Yeah, what would be your advice for somebody, an artist, trying to find their signature touch?
I say just make a lot of pots and make what makes your heart sing. um, I actually talk to my pots sometimes. I know I'm really on the right track when I look at them and I get this little flutter and I want to they're like have their own little personality. If they could talk, I'm not sure what they would say, but it would be kind of sassy. Like that's how I know that I'm on the right path.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Being able to talk with your pieces and let them probably talk back to you. It's a working collaborative piece. I love that. And so while you're making these pieces and experimenting, I'm sure that's where you're finding a lot of your signature styles. And you might create something that might not be the greatest or might be perceived differently. How do you handle criticism?
I don't get a lot of criticism. Mostly the criticism I get is people thinking my work is too expensive, which is kind of silly because in the grand scheme of like pottery in the United States, it's really not. So I get that at markets. Sometimes most people are tactful. Sometimes they're not. I just let that slide because I get it. Like, can't afford everything all the time. I would say I don't get a lot of criticism beyond that. I'm sure it's out there. Fine. People are, no one's banging down my door to tell me they don't like my pots, which is nice.
I can't imagine you get any criticism. I just have to ask as an artist, your work it's stunning, and as you said, it's functional, so if somebody tells you that it doesn't work, they're wrong. I mean, all of your stuff works. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. And then, time to clear the air a little bit, do you have any misconceptions about your craft?
I don't know if this is misconceptions. In the beginning, I was taught very functional, very production pottery oriented. And for a long time, I felt strongly that I needed to adhere to some of those traditional ideas. It took a while to break free from that, but I think I think that is a journey that a lot of potters go through, unless you're coming from an art background already and you just use pottery as your canvas for your other art. If you're coming from a more traditional background, it takes a while to break free from that. And even the snobbery of like, I mix all my own glazes and I would never buy glazes, like all of these ideas that are ingrained in us, and we're like, you know what? Yeah, I can buy some glazes, or I can, whatever's easier. At this point in my life, I've learned to do some things easier.
Huh.
No.
Okay, don't make things too difficult.
Yes.
We were also talking when I was setting my stuff down here that potters are usually considered very dirty, and their studios are just covered in clay and dust. And it kind of is, but I'm not gonna lie, it's very organized in here. Everything has a place, and it's just kind of a great little studio.
Thank you. I've tried. It's gotten better over the years, for sure.
For sure. And then just to lighten the mood a little bit, any funny or interesting stories that have happened with pottery lately?
I don't know. I did get pretty sassy the other day, and I'd usually hold my tongue, but this woman came into my booth, and it's not somebody I know, but she was like, her and her daughter were in my booth, and she was looking at a mug, and she looked at the price, and she was like, "Is this the price for 4 mugs?" It was like $50, which is also, it's already a steal. And I was like, "No, these are all handmade." And I said, "Have you ever made a mug?" Which I wouldn't normally. I was definitely feeling a little sassy. Because I was like, you know what? And she was like, "No, I haven't." She was very nice. And I question whether I was being a little bitchy, but I've polled a few friends and they're like, "No, I think anyone would know that. Yeah. Like, obviously this wasn't made at Walmart. I'm not reselling Target mugs or whatever."
As artists, you can't make everyone happy. Yeah. Even though you try and appease everyone, there's going to be someone. People will always be people.
Yep.
And going outside a little bit, what's next for the world of Sonja Gloria Pottery?
I think my long-term goals, I've been putting this out there, is I do love to teach, and I am a very good teacher, not to toot my own horn, but like I've been doing it a long time. And actually since I was like 17, I started teaching summer camp, and that included some ceramics. And there's a learning curve to teaching, and it actually teaches you a lot about your craft that you don't get otherwise.
Absolutely.
But it takes away from my creating time. So my goal is to at some point make enough money to not teach and maybe move my studio to my house, and then do more, still probably do farmers market, but more online sales in the future. Absolutely. And then just keep expanding.
Yeah.
Whatever, like, I'm excited about making.
Absolutely. You teach. I think that's the biggest thing. When I ask what's your biggest advice for newcomers, I think it's take your class.
Yeah, there you go. Come on down.
Come take a class from Sonja and learn how to make some stunning pottery and ceramics. And then what's next for you personally?
I mentioned earlier when we were chatting, my husband got tenure, I think last year or the year before. Yeah. Ooh. So I'll probably be in Sioux Falls for a while. But beyond that, he does get sabbatical next year, so I might live in Guadalajara for like 6 or 7 months. So that's gonna be really
bummer.
fun. And while we're there, hopefully I will either bring my baby wheel, I have a tiny one, or find a studio to work in.
A travel wheel?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Wow. So it is a craft that you can kind of take with you.
Some, yeah.
Okay.
I prefer my big sturdy wheels, but if I have to, I will take my little one with me. And there's even little baby kilns you can buy. So.
And where can we see your work?
Online, SonjaGloriaPottery.com. Social medias, Sonja Gloria Pottery. Almost all of them. In Sioux Falls, I'm at Sweetgrass Soapery, Falls Park Farmers Market, the outdoor store. And then I'm going to hopefully be in, I think it's L Gallery downtown Phillips soon.
Yeah, and what I really appreciate about your social media is not only are you showcasing your work, but you're also giving tips and tricks, and you're sitting there and you're giving some instruction. And so I think that is just so awesome to be able to watch you be able to work and be also able to see your work too. And you've got your website, you're up on social media. Is there anything else that you'd like to say before we wrap up?
We were talking about the artist way, and I thought of something that is important, but it's different. So I don't know if you're also familiar with Elizabeth Gilbert and some of her work. And she's a famous writer, but she works off the artist way too. But she has a book called Big Magic, all about creative process. And her thing that has always stuck with me, it's a beautiful book. She wrote Eat, Pray, Love.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But her thing is that everything you do has a shit sandwich. And you just have to decide what type of shit sandwich you're willing to eat. So, like, no matter where you end up in life or, like, creative process or, like, job that you're really excited about, there's going to be some aspect of it that you don't like. And you have to decide if, like... So, in pottery, it could be the dirtiness. It could be the chemicals. And it's like, are you willing to eat that shit sandwich? But I actually tell my kids this, too. It's like, the things... There's going to be something you don't like about everything you do. Like...
And sometimes that shit sandwich is massive.
And maybe it's not for you.
But also, you could also turn that shit sandwich into a culinary masterpiece.
Yeah.
So absolutely, I get that. Being able to take what life gives you and take it with a grain of salt and pursue it, which you have. So again, thank you for that. I can't thank you enough for joining me and piquing my interest. I do like to end with one last question.
Okay. If
you could excel at any other craft rather than your own, what would you like to do?
I'm surprised I'm not a jeweler or a costume designer. Ooh. My first love was sewing and creating my own clothes in high school. Okay. But I didn't know that was something that people did as a profession. Huh. So, and then my backup career, if I had to get a real job, would be a children's librarian.
Okay. Amazing. Yeah. Well, who knows? Maybe we'll see some ceramic jewelry one day.
I do a few things. Nothing too fancy.
All right. Well, we'll be on the lookout. Thank you, and I thank you to all my peekers out there. Please let me know if you know of any special or unique artists or art forms you think I should explore. I am currently in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and can't wait to see where Pique My Interest takes me next. Remember, creativity comes from the heart. Push yourselves, be kind to each other. I'm Scoop Decker, and thank you for helping me pique my interest. This episode was produced by Lizzie Webb. Be sure to follow on social media to stay updated on all the adventures into art and creativity, as well as all of the past Pique My Interest featured artists. If you like, please leave a review. Send us a message. Tell us what you think. Pique My Interest is for you, the peakers. Cheers to creativity, and I hope your interest is piqued.